Ho, ho, ho! Friends, shopping malls, manger scenes, Santa Claus, red and green, Emmanuel, Ebenezer, stockings hung. Advent is a Christmas teaser. It's the Eco Christian Podcast. We're having fun and exploring what it means to be Christian on planet Earth. I'm Caleb. I'll be your host. This is a special episode because my wife, Emily, is joining me in the effort of addressing some difficult questions around being ecologically minded during what is known to be the most consumer-driven time of the year, and also, of course, the celebration of the birth of our Savior. So let's talk about what it means to be Christians celebrating Christmas on planet Earth.
Hello. Today, friends, is the most special because I'm here with my one and only person, my wife, Emily. Say hello.
Hello.
She is a wife, a mother, a pastor, writer, and most recently working to help turn guns into garden tools, which is really exciting. But today, we're here to dialogue about this season we are in right now. And for some, this season goes by the name of the chaotic weeks leading up to Christmas. Others of us name this season as Advent, but the reality is, living where we live in the world, we have some feet at both worlds, whether we like it or not, perhaps. So today, friends, we're going to tackle the tough questions when it comes to what it might look like to responsibly participate or not participate in the culture of quote-unquote American Christmas presented to us, particularly as it stands in contrast maybe to our other values, say caring for the earth. So before we get into that, Emily, since some of these people might not know how awesome you are, if you would like to share a bit about your eco journey and how we met. I'm just kidding, we don't have to share that, but just details that are pertinent. I'd love for listeners to hear a bit maybe about your own eco journey, and we can sort of springboard from there.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I am Emily JoAnn Haynes, and I am married to Caleb, the host of this podcast. And I was trying to think about my eco-Christian journey, which I guess is another way to say, tell us a little bit about who you are and why you care about this. And the first thought that I had was that I really didn't grow up in the country. I grew up in urban environments and spent some time in nature, I suppose, playing soccer and things, but that certainly wasn't the beginning, and there wasn't any connection to creation care within like the church context that I was raised in as a pastor's kid. So for me, I think probably the first kind of like, what, this can be a thing, was when I was in high school. I had a friend who I was over at her house one day and we were trying to cook something. And she was like, run out there to the garden and grab some basil for this recipe. And I was like, run out to the garden. I mean, it was like speaking a foreign language to me, like as a senior in high school. And she was like, yeah, we're growing basil in the garden. And I was like, look, I see your garden, but there is no way like that I'm going to be able to identify an herb that is growing there. So she did it herself, and we went on, finished cooking whatever we were cooking. And then fast forward about a year and a half, 2 years, what would have been my sophomore year at college, I moved to Germany to do like a mission core thing with the Church of the Nazarene and spent a year volunteering there on the mission field in Germany. And in Germany, the way you do trash is very different than the way they do trash in Germany. And there's like 6 bins in Germany, and they're all very specific and required. So there is trash and there is recycling, but there's also composting. There's also glass. The recycling is split. Yeah, it's split between paper and plastic. You have to separate everything out. And it became one of the biggest headaches living there, was having American groups come over and having to teach them how to throw their trash away because they were just so bad at it.
Ironically, I feel like Americans are great at that, like
throwing trash away. Well,
that's a bad joke.
Yeah, they did it. They were so, it was like a brain block. Not only were they in another country, they were just, it was like I was speaking German to them to try to get them to understand like how to
see what you did there.
Throw away trash in a way that actually was required. And they would not pick up your trash if you did not do it this way. Or so I was led to believe. I'm not 100% sure on that, but Germans are rule followers for a kind of general rule of thumb. But so there's that. And then when I came back from Germany after a year, joined the Environmental Sustainability Association at Trevecca, which was a club that you were also a part of.
Yeah, we had a club.
We had a environmental club.
You're doing the work of environmental justice in the world when you're part of a club.
Yeah. It was really great. Well, the good part of that club was that we were actually given a chapel. So I don't know if all clubs were given chapels or they were just like, you guys are cute, we're going to let you have a chapel. And so we got to recruit our own chapel speaker at this club. And I had listened to this podcast with Matthew Sleeth, who wrote a book called Serve God, Save the Planet, and had read that book. And he was kind of one of the first voices on like what it means to be a Christian and to care for the earth as a way of caring for others. So that his work is closely tied to like illness and how environmental factors affect illness. So we got him to come speak at Trevecca as a part of this club's work. And I would say those are kind of the beginning first few steps. And then it's just kind of, I don't do anything half-assed. So
we can't say that.
I don't do anything. What did I say on something? Half-butted. Oh, you were in there. I don't do anything halfway. You can edit all that out if you want.
Let's get everything to say. That's what I love about you. And most of us are terrified of. So, yeah. So, right on. So, which brings you to 100% caring for creation.
That's right. I've always been 100% at anything.
100%. Right. That's right. Yeah. Love it.
100% and 3 fire emojis.
There it is. Which may be the title of this episode. So, being ecologically aware during what is known to be the holiday season is no small task. So, I was thinking about approaching this subject and how it's just layered with issues. And there's the social pressure of participating in the dirty Santa at work, or the in-laws who are expecting a gift but aren't really going to like anything that you give them, or the children who, through literally every single piece of holiday media, expect to wake up on Christmas morning with a stack of freshly wrapped presents. There's, then there is attempting to actually participate in the season of Advent, right? If you're living into your Christian calendar, which is meant to be a season akin to that of Lent, right? The season of waiting and fasting and anticipating the coming of Jesus born in Bethlehem. But how do we possibly be present to such an experience inside a culture that starts playing Christmas music and popping up Christmas trees, right? At some point mid-November. And, there's just so many things so many starting places and things we could talk about here. But maybe a good place to start is, sharing some of the particulars around what the season of Advent or Christmas looks like for our little family, and maybe hopefully particularizing it like that will help pull out some threads that can be beneficial, hopefully, for anyone listening. So, yeah. So I think just an acknowledgement at the front end that it's hard to sort of, well, one, maybe even ironically be Christian during the holidays in to some degree, but two, like to be ecologically minded in particular. And so I think these questions are sort of circling around us here, and how do we navigate this season as Westerners, quote unquote, in a particular place, trying to stay grounded in what matters for us.
Yeah. I feel like in just preparing as a pastor for preaching the season of Advent, I am sort of like theologically up on my game into talking about this idea of just like what Advent is and what Advent is not. And I think that if we tap in only to the cultural realities surrounding us around these days, prepping us for the Christmas season, we get the total wrong picture about what Advent is supposed to be about. And as if God ordained this season in order to put up Christmas trees and bake sugar cookies or something like that. Like,
I think God likes sugar cookies.
Well, Santa does, and we often do complete those two at Christmas. So what was that?
Man.
The radio last night?
Yeah.
It was like the radio station in our locality that plays Christmas music starting the day after Thanksgiving all the time. So it's like the popular station, and it was that station we were listening to, and there was like this ad. It was like what's the host of the radio show called?
Radio host.
Okay, radio.
DJ,
they were saying every Christmas Eve we go to church, and that's when Santa comes.
Yeah, verbatim. Yeah.
It was like, was there a period there, or
next sentence?
Did Santa come to church, or was it like we go to church and then like later that night Santa comes to the house? But it was just so conflated. It was really funny. In light of like trying to focus not on Santa Claus, which ironically we're recording this podcast on St. Nicholas Day, the feast day of St. Nicholas, who is a Christian and a saint in the church, who is someone that we remember this time of year for his generosity and his care for the poor and the way that he helped people. And there are a lot of legends about him. Some of them probably have some truth in them. But
would you say that, St. Nicholas and his legends and all that sort of comes with sort of what we think we know about his life is some of the foundation to the reason why people give gifts on Christmas?
Yes. I mean, one of the more known legends is that there were these three girls in this family. He was three, and the family couldn't afford dowries for their girls. And so he, in that time, that would have left them sort of destitute, to not be married, to live a life of poverty, and to not have a future. And he basically, the legend goes that he threw gold coins that would be enough for their dowry through the window on Christmas Eve as a way to provide for them for their future. And there's some legends that say they landed in their socks that were drying on the windows.
Bro was a good shot.
Yeah, who knows? But certainly the stocking stuffing, I think we can probably draw a more direct line. But different cultures have celebrated St. Nicholas in different ways, and so the tradition kind of spreads through culture. And I think in reality, the reasons we give gifts on Christmas is because capitalism is what we worship. So
wow, we can't say that either on this podcast.
Well, so can I take over the podcast for a minute?
That's why you're here.
Okay, so not if you're driving, but if you're listening to this and you're not driving, can you just close your eyes for a minute and I just want you to imagine something, to picture something. I want you to picture just a really great worship service and just this great gathering of people who have come together to worship God. And I want you to imagine what it looks like in the space they're meeting, what the people are doing. I want you to imagine the parking lot. What does the parking lot look like? I want you to imagine, what are people thinking? What are people feeling? And I want you to imagine, where is God in all of that? What is God thinking, feeling, doing, being? And then finally, what is the hope there? What hope springs from people coming together to worship God? Hopefully you've been able to picture some sort of version of that. And now, I want to put you in another space. In your mind's eye, imagine a shopping mall in the month of December. Even better if it's like the 20th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd of December. And I want you to imagine this great gathering. What are the people doing? What are the people feeling? What does the parking lot look like? Where is God? What is God doing? What is God feeling? And then finally, what is the hope that springs from this gathering? Okay, that's all I got. That's my Advent meditation.
Snap my fingers.
On the worship of stuff.
Yeah, man, I think you've gone straight to it, because I think worship is, I think if we're honest, it's a word that is entangled in what we do around the holidays. And, if you look at the numbers, around waste and consumerism and all that around the holidays, like it's staggering. And so, and I hesitate to say this, but it's kind of like that's why we're talking. I do think that, I feel like I was talking to somebody yesterday about this, actually, that I think I wonder sometimes if the true golden calf for us during the age that we live in isn't like the way we want to do Christmas. And you start like suggesting to folks that like maybe they should do Christmas differently, and you better watch out. Like,
yeah, because you know what the cultural expectation is. Have yourself a merry little Christmas.
Oh, everyone's gonna think we're like a couple of Grinches here, and we might be.
It's like very individualistic, and the wish is that I am wishing you to have yourself, because it's up to you, a merry little Christmas. And so much is in that, like so much about me and what makes me merry and my Christmas.
Well, so I think here's what's going on. I think if we're going to peel back another kind of layer that we're already peeling back here, is that I'm going to try to turn this into maybe a little bit more of a concrete example, but think about there being two different Christmases. Like there's like this one thing over here that we culturally call and globally call Christmas, and it has to do with having yourself a merry little Christmas and all the things that come with that. And elf and, all the things. And then there's this other thing over here that we also call Christmas, that follows a season called Advent, that is particularly Christian, right? And so, I almost think that, and so what we usually experience, kind of like you were talking about in that radio commercial, is a syncretism between those two Christmases. And that's, for us, I think, what we're talking about as Christians, particularly as people who are particularly trying to be mindful of how we walk upon the earth, are navigating and finding that tension. And the questions and the reasons why this is an interesting thing to dialogue about is all the tensions that exist between those two identities for us. One, as someone who has a lot of fond memories that often do get romanticized, right, and Americanized around these versions of Christmas, right? And there's a part of us that wants to keep that alive, and we want our kids to experience that. And, and we're thinking like, we got that kind of Christmas, shouldn't our kids have it too? And all of that stuff. And then sort of also like, well, actually, I believe that this is not like about us in that way at all. Like that we make Christmas about ourselves and these gifts and these traditions rather than the greatest story ever told. Right. And so there's sort of this dance between these two things. And so all these questions surface and bubble up in the midst of that sort of like, does this make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I think what I'm hearing is there's basically these two narratives. There's the cultural narrative, which we swim in. We don't even think about it. It's just the air we breathe. And then there's sort of like I think for many people, for many Christians, the Christian narrative is overlaid on that. So there could be some people out there who grew up with Jesus's birth being the center of Christmas. However, if you're like me and like a lot of people, you may have been told by your parents Jesus is the center of Christmas, but you know, because of Praxis, what Christmas is about. Christmas is about breakfast on Christmas morning. It's about gifts. It's about like the one time of year that you basically are gonna get all the things that you want. The hopes and dreams of all your years come true, right? And Jesus is like, oh, but remember, Jesus is the center of this. And it's like, it's said maybe, but it's not, that's actually not what we practice. And so there's sort of a disconnect between what we say we're practicing and what we are practicing. And if I could add my 2 cents, it would be like, the reason for this, I think one of the root reasons for this is because we don't know how to enter the season of Advent. We don't know how to feast. And we don't know how to celebrate because we haven't fasted and we haven't been in a season of longing and really complaining. This is what I talked about in my sermon on Sunday. I don't think you were in there. You were with the kids, but about how the prophets are just, in the Psalms, there's so many complaints. Like, God, this is your job to fix these problems in our world. Like, all of these bad things are happening. Where are you? Come. The passage for this last Sunday, tear open the heavens and come down. I mean, graphic imagery, desiring God's coming. And immediately that Isaiah 64 passage turns to this confession of sin. Like, we are not worthy for you to come. Like, what happens if you do come? It's like this longing, this hope that God will come and solve all our problems, and simultaneously this feeling of inadequacy to receive God among us, this this the lack of worthiness that we have actually sinned, that we have done things that aren't right. And I challenged our congregation to think about what would we immediately start confessing if we knew God was coming among us? How would our lives change if we knew God was going to tear open the heavens and come down? And I think that that's a good posture to have around the season of Advent, because until we enter into a season of longing and hopeful darkness, where the hope, the love, the joy, and the peace that we light candles for at Advent is actually not true, sort of ironic. It's what we hope for in faith, but not the reality as we see in sight. And so then the season of Christmas can become the season of celebration and feasting.
Thinking about, I think that's a really good thing to sort of, contextualize Christmas. I think that is important, that often we just go straight to the celebration and the feasting, and it's missing the context of how we got here. And so are you saying that no one should have breakfast and open presents on Christmas, or are you saying that we're missing? Have we done the work to have breakfast and open presents on Christmas?
Well, I think for a lot of people in our culture, Christmas starts the day after Thanksgiving ends, and Christmas ends the day that Christmas starts, and so our seasons are off. And so we celebrate Christmas from November, the last day of November, all the way to December 25th, and then Christmas is over. That's kind of the cultural rhythm. And in order to enter into Advent, you have to be countercultural. You have to sort of reject that rhythm. And we kind of joke with our kids like, it's after Thanksgiving. We can't listen to that radio station because they're playing only Christmas music, and it's not Christmas yet. And, we talk with them about when we go in the store and there's all these Christmas trees up in October now. And we're like, it's not even Advent yet. How do they have Christmas trees, And there's a very strong countercultural vibe. And I don't think that means you have to say no to everything around Christmas. But I do think that you have to do the work to critically think about, particularly if you have kids, but because you have more responsibility. But even if you don't, what is your practices and traditions around Christmas doing for your spirit, for your relationship with God? And if Christmas isn't a thing that is like a discipling season for you, if Advent isn't making you a better disciple of Jesus, then we might as well just throw it out as the pagan holiday that it basically is in America. It is a pagan worship ceremony to the gods of behemoth corporations who want to sell us the goods of the earth for cheap prices, to make as much money as possible, and to put us into debt as the only way to limit that.
Yeah. I definitely concur with what you're saying. And I think that there is, there's a lot there. And I honestly think that that's probably a layer beneath where, even if that's occurring, it's not necessarily where people are coming from or where they're seeing it. I think part of the problem is that we haven't been given like a good alternative narrative of how to do anything differently. And if I say that I want to shop and find gifts, for people who I love during the holidays, right? I'm trying to do this as an expression of love for people that that I love. And so I want to get them something that's going to make them happy because I love them. But sort of behind this is, this is a cultural expectation that we've, if we're honest, and I say we in culture and tradition and history at this point, has placed upon this sacred holiday that's supposed to be about the living Jesus Christ on earth. And so I think that's the part that really doesn't fit. And I think that we're talking about like, what does it mean to change that narrative? But and so not to like demonize people who give gifts or and that sort of thing, but to say like, how is this an expression of the narrative that I want to say that this is about? And so I think that there is still some gray area there, and we celebrate the 12 days of Christmas. A lot of people think the 12 days of Christmas are like somewhere within the days leading up to Christmas Day on the 25th, but obviously that's Advent. That's the season of anticipation. And actually, in the Christian calendar, the 12 days of Christmas are the 12 days beginning on Christmas Day on the 25th and goes all the way to January 6th, which is Epiphany. Anyway, so we actually have like bags that hang in our house. There's 12 of them, and the kids open one every single day and of Christmas, and it tells them what we're going to be doing that day. Now, some days is less, some days is more. Some days we're doing puzzles. Admittedly, like sometimes there is like maybe a gift or something that they get on one of those days. Maybe like a game or something that creates another experience for us. But by and large, we're sort of like, ironically, we do like a ton, I think, compared to some of the other people, maybe we know on Christmas with and for our kids, but we don't like give gifts in the traditional way. And we generally don't have like things that we're opening on Christmas Day. And inevitably every time we go anywhere for the next 2 weeks after December 25th, there's people like, hey, what did Santa bring you, little girl? And it's like, I literally hate it. But our kids are just like...
Kids are like very well versed in answering this question now.
At this point.
Because they get asked it so much. So our kids are 10 and 7. And so for years now, they've been asked this question. So we've never done Christmas gifts in a traditional way. And in a traditional way, I mean, we don't give Christmas gifts on Christmas Day. And then, like Caleb said, we might do a gift here or there, but it's usually small, secondhand, and during one of the days of Christmas. And so the girls are like, well, we actually don't get Christmas gifts. And you would think if you put 1 + 1 = 2, 1 is gifts make us happy. 2 is getting the gifts you want makes good Christmas, or 1 + 1 = 2 = good Christmas. You would think our kids, thought that we hated them because we don't give them Christmas gifts, don't allow anyone else to give them Christmas gifts, including their grandparents or other family members. But no, they're just like, actually, like, we don't do Christmas gifts. We have the 12 days of Christmas, and every day we get to open a bag, and there's this different thing in the bag, and it's something we do together as a family for 12 days. And like you said, it's like a lot more commitment than buying your kids like
it's a lot of work.
Yeah. It's a lot of work, and we're like on Christmas Eve often like cutting out these little pictures, because up until this point, our 7-year-old was not like the best reader. Now she's getting into it, but so you have to have pictures to say what you're doing, and and you have to figure out the whole calendar around the next 2 weeks. And you basically have to take off work. So we basically don't work between...
It's kind of like a big 2-week party. But but when you tell people that and the kids respond, it's either with like incredible pity of like, oh, these poor children. So one of the things that we do, like actually every year on Christmas morning, we actually go like and have breakfast at Waffle House. And, and you're just like, the people at Waffle House on Christmas morning, it's like
nicest people.
I'm telling you what, this old man, he was like just giving them like $10 bills,
It's the thing, like if we went to Waffle House every week, it really wouldn't be that special, right? To go on Christmas morning. But the thing is that we never go to Waffle House. We go to Waffle House one day a year, and it's Christmas morning, and it's kind of what we found works. It's like the only restaurant open on Christmas morning. And you may be saying, well, you're making people work. And I'm saying they're already working. Waffle House, unless like a terrorist attack has shut down the city, Waffle House will be open. That's actually how they measure some forms of terrorism and like natural disasters, whether or not Waffle House had closed or not. And so my choice in this is not going to affect whether Waffle House is open or closed. So I don't have to make breakfast. I can tip my waiter or waitress super well and make them have a better day. I'm just selling the rest.
Yeah, you're really selling it. Okay.
My point is that it wouldn't be special. Like, we've chosen this as an experience.
Right.
It's several markers. It's not just one marker. It's also about doing less.
Right. Yeah. We generally don't eat out a lot and things like that. Anyway, but I was thinking about just so recently I went to Ross and the department store, which I never hardly ever go to, and of course in like real smooth fashion I decide I'm going to drop in there in December, which let me just say I am not saying this in a way in which I'm condemning folks for or judging folks for shopping at Ross, but I walked in just long enough to see the checkout line and I was like, nope. I mean, there were rows of buggies just full of, kind of just junk. I mean, it's just kind of like, that's kind of like Ross, but it's like these cheap plastic toys and just gadgets and gizmos and this knickknacks of clothing. And it's like, which is one thing in itself, but it's a whole other thing as buggy after buggy, like comes through this checkout line in the name of like celebrating Christmas. And the whole site just made me honestly just kind of really sad. And it made me sad for all those people who were waiting in that long line and spending all that money. But it made me feel sad because it's just like, it just made me feel like, man, we're all just kind of trapped, like trapped in this narrative that says you have to do this, or like there's like all of this cultural or familial expectation that we've just kind of put on ourselves and allowed marketing to put on us, and so what would it mean to alter that narrative? I think around the holidays is, I think, a powerful and hopeful thing to think about.
Yeah. So can we actually, let's get a little bit practical, because I feel like we haven't talked very practically, and I am very practical. So that's what I care about. It's like the practices. So let's talk practices. Okay. So our family, well, first of all, we started with the no gifting when the kids were born.
Right.
Which I think is important. I think it is harder to start midway because you're managing, everyone's experience, learning, this is learned from hosting Airbnb for so long. Whether or not someone has a good experience has to do with what expectations are set up for them. And if the experience meets their expectations, they have a good experience. But if the experience does not meet their expectations, then they don't. Well, if you set up the expectations from day one with your kids and with grandparents, we're not doing Christmas gifts.
Which is no small feat.
It's hard at first, but it pays dividends in the long run. And boundaries. We worked pretty hard. There's been some pretty tense moments around gift giving. And I think particularly for grandparents, it can be difficult because they don't get it. They don't understand. Well, my experience is that grandparents don't generally understand why you want to do anything different. And it becomes like a critique of your childhood or something. Like, why was it so bad for you to get Christmas gifts when you were a child?
Yeah, I think that's important to recognize, is that like that's not at all like very fond memories of my childhood Christmas, like very fond memories, but that, the trajectory, which is human growth and maturity and evolution over time, is that we believe, that we're working to continue to do things better, and that we wear seatbelts now and, do all sorts of things that we didn't do in the 80s. this is just an example.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a great comparison to say like not doing Christmas gifts is to wearing seatbelts.
No, I'm just saying like there was at one point, generations ago, I was literally at Chireka Towers yesterday talking with an older gentleman and he was telling me about his childhood Christmas and how, he had this one wrapped package, like this homemade train or whatever it was. And like the joy, like at one point, like that was it. And it made a lot more sense.
Yeah.
But like today, it generally reflects nothing of, like the kinds of like, I mean, we're not wealthy by any means, but I can't think of a single thing that our kids need, honestly, toy or otherwise, for the most part.
Yeah, we're all wealthy beyond measure when you consider the world and generations before us. As far as stuff goes. Now, as far as time goes, we're very poor. And I think that is, that's why the way we do Christmas is harder, because it is a big time commitment. And
so, sorry.
So practically grandparents and kids, setting up expectations for what this is going to look like is really important early on. But what we do is we celebrate Advent by doing an Advent calendar, which we make together as a practice with our congregation every year on the first Sunday of Advent. Has different things, sometimes candy, sometimes challenges of like helping a neighbor, giving something to your meal person, or whatever the thing is that how you want to spend your Advent preparing for this Christmas season, kind of with the focus that I already have discussed. And that is a way that we get ready. Another way we get ready is we have an Advent storybook that we read through with the kids. Now, this is probably, your kids need to be maybe 6 or 7 to be able to do this, but one of them is called Jotham's Journey. Another is Bartholomew's Passage. There's like 4 or 5 different ones that you can read through that actually follow the calendar from Advent through Advent, and they're pretty engaging and kind of cliffhangers. Sometimes we skip the theological reflection at the end because they're a little bit more, they're not quite the theological lens I want to look at it through with our kids, but they're not bad. But that's one thing we do that really helps the kids anticipate it, because it's these kids that are having these experiences in ancient Israel as they await the Messiah, and it's these challenges they overcome, and then on Christmas morning they end up getting to witness the birth of this child. So it's a pretty cool and powerful story. And then practically, we just do a really big increase in decor in our house on Christmas Day. So we do start to get out Christmas decorations, and even on the way to school this morning, it was kind of a funny conversation. And this is what I'm kind of talking about is your experience of Advent making you a disciple of Jesus. And daily, our 7-year-old daughter was like, why do we decorate for Christmas? And without a beat, our 10-year-old daughter responds to her and says, it's kind of like decorating for Jesus's birthday party. And so it's just kind of like such a good little exchange to kind of see that this is working through them. Like, what is it? What is Christmas about? Oh, it's about Jesus's birth. And so decorating for Christmas is decorating for Jesus's birthday party. And then they said, but then Story asked me, but why do we have a Christmas tree? Like, what is that about? And I was like, I don't know if I can answer that.
Yeah.
Best thing I could come up with in the moment was, I was like, sometimes we decorate our house with flowers. Don't you like a big flower, don't you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Specialize in
Fake flower.
Fake flower. The memory is fun.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's just a big increase in decor on Christmas morning. And then the other practical thing we do, and I'm going to even do it way more this year, you don't even know yet, but I have had pieces coming. I've outlined this whole experiential journey for our nativity set. So we don't have the nativity set that comes out the day after Thanksgiving and Jesus is already born. We actually have a pregnant figure that journeys with the donkey and Joseph to Bethlehem. But this year it's even going to be better because we're going to have scenes of Gabriel's annunciation to Mary. We're going to have Mary who goes and visits Elizabeth and John the Baptist jumps in her womb. We're going to have the journey of Mary telling Joseph that she's pregnant, and then Gabriel actually has to come to Joseph. So we're going to have all of these scenes
are happening
played out in our house. Every single day of Advent, it's going to be a different scene. It's kind of like Elf on the Shelf, but really Christian. And so a different scene is going to be played out with these characters that we have. And so Jesus is not born until Christmas morning. And even when we get to Christmas morning, that's when the Magi start their journey. So they don't arrive till January 6th. So our manger scene is telling the story of our anticipation of this like pregnant waiting for the first day of Advent. Jesus is born on Christmas, and then on Epiphany, that's when the Magi arrive.
I think part of the higher level thing that I think is worth acknowledging here is that what we're talking about is really decentralized from December 25th. And I think, when we're talking about Christmas, we're talking about truly this season stretching across, the beginning of Advent all the way to Epiphany. And I think that's a helpful way to sort of think about the narrative as well. Is like, how can we embody this story over this period of time and journey on this story, in our hearts, but also practically in our hands and our lives. And, and there's lots of different ways. And I think that's sort of a takeaway that I'm getting here is like, really, we're only limited by our creativity and our imaginations. And I hope that this episode sparks some imagination for people to get creative, right? And this isn't just something, obviously, for people with kids to reconfigure and calibrate, but for all of us.
So anything else practical that we do that would be helpful for your...
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly there are lots of things, and now I'm kind of like, I'm tempted to just say, like, if people have like specific questions, maybe this can be turned into something we write up, or a part 2, because I have a feeling that there are a lot of practical questions left for listeners around this, and maybe how we do the 12 days of Christmas and what that looks like. And I'm just pulling up a note on my phone because we, in early December, Emily and I start collaborating on a shared note around what we're going to do for this year's 12 days of Christmas, and sometimes sometimes it does involve a lot of like going and doing the zoo or a craft day, or maybe skating, or swimming, or going somewhere. I mean, for us, we live in Nashville, so there's all sorts of things to do, and a lot of Nashville things that we actually never do, even though we live here, but everyone comes to Nashville to do these things. But it could just also mean just sort of like something small and something special, like in a family time, or like we have some video game systems that we hardly ever play, like have a day where you just cuddle up and play video games, or or practice like donating and cleaning out a closet one day, like and there's usually sort of a day that we go out and serve or pick up trash in our neighborhood. We usually do every year. Sometimes we have a sleepover with friends. So
can I just add something here that's very practical, which is that it doesn't usually make it on our list, but like one of the things that's kind of on my list of things to do in this time is to actually rent a carpet cleaner and clean our carpets. And I know that that's a goofy thing to mention, but
it brings you joy.
It does bring me joy to have clean carpets. And we can make this super theological and say, like, there's something about the birth of Jesus that is like a reset for us. It's like a refresh, a reset. Like, the carpets are the same, they're different, they're changed. And there's an experience of, I think there's a cultural experience of relief when Christmas is over. But I really look forward to the days of Christmas, because it is like an opportunity for me to spend time with my kids that I don't get to do during the previous months while they're in school. They're out of school during this whole season. It is an opportunity to do things like clean my carpets that really weigh on me. And I have more time. I have more space to do what is important for me. And that is connecting with my family, and that is making my environment a welcoming space for all of us. And that it's holistic. And I think that's what we need to think about when we think about Christmas. If Jesus is coming is good news, what does that mean? And how is that reflected in our lives? And I think the other side of that is we have to look at who it was that made it to Jesus's birth. Who did the angels announce Jesus's birth to? It was these people who, it was not like the religious leaders. It was like the common shepherd. And the star that appeared called who? Not a Jewish king, but a foreign king. And there's just this, it's like there as a witness for whomever.
Yeah. Is this at all reflective of what your Christmas looks like? Yeah.
Like, is that an open invitation for like God to appear? Well, how about we do this? I don't know how you want to end this, but what if I ask you what one of your favorite experiences of Christmas was as a family, since we've been doing this different? And then you ask me that. Do you want to do that? Why don't you ask me first, because I have mine.
Okay. What's your favorite?
So this one year, I think it was on Christmas Day. It was either on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve. I think it was Christmas Eve, actually. We went to Green Street Church of Christ, and I don't know if you remember this, and a friend of ours was running this burrito ministry where she would make burritos for neighbors experiencing homelessness and go and hand them out. She knew all the people, and it was just a really cool thing to be able to be a part of. And so we went and volunteered and made burritos and things. But it was at this church, Green Street Church of Christ, who for decades now has become a temporary residence for neighbors experiencing homelessness. They've built tiny houses on the property, and they have somewhat of a camp with rolls and things, and they've built bathrooms and just like this haven for people who don't have another place to go. And we went and we made burritos, and then during the course of the meal, I met this woman. And we were relatively new to Green Street at the time. And I was like, I'm really interested in how this works. And like, what are the tiny houses like? And she's like, oh, well, actually, if you want to, you can come see my house. And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, come when we're done, like come around and come see it. And so after dinner, we went and followed her. And it's this woman who was experiencing homelessness who welcomed us on Christmas Eve into her humble, it didn't even have heat. It had a single cot. And I mean, she couldn't offer us a single thing except for welcome into her door. And it was like this beautiful experience of knowing what it must have been like on the real Christmas Eve to have nowhere to be, and yet to be welcomed in to something that was so humble, so rugged, but to be so thankful just to have a place to be and people to share it with. And I feel like to me that was like probably my favorite Christmas experience of all time, was being welcomed into this woman's home and her hosting us. We often get so caught up with hosting on Christmas that we miss that we are actually the guests of the feast.
Man, so good.
No,
I totally can't share after that, because it's just like total shallow. Because all I was thinking about, I was like, man, I love having friends over and like having charcuterie and playing improv games. So
Love.
yeah,
Good.
it's what came to my mind. I'm like blocks of cheese.
Is it fudge from the monks and all kinds of cheeses?
Yes, all of the above.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think that's the important. That's like inhale, exhale, givers and receivers. And if you can't do both of those well, you're missing the whole. And I think, yeah. So, thanks for sharing that. I really love the ground we've covered here, even though I feel like we could go on and on. So thank you for joining me in this episode and tackling some of these hard Christmas inquiries.
Yeah, find me on the internet if you want to talk more. I'm happy to talk with anyone who has more practical questions.
Find her on the internet. You heard it here. We'll put some things in the show notes for you guys to follow Emily and her work. And this will not be our only chat for sure. So,
Yep.
All right. Love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye.
So may your Advent be full of the hope, peace, joy, and love of God as we approach Christmas. Leave us a review and a star rating. And if you have more holiday questions, shoot a message. Let's chat.